Let's start with a really provocative idea. What if the official advice on healthy eating, the stuff we've all been following for generations, was the very thing that's actually harming our brains? It's a wild thought, and in this explainer, we're going to unpack the controversial idea that our whole understanding of a healthy diet might be completely fundamentally wrong.
Just think about that for a second. For 50 years, the message has been clear. Cut down on fat, cut down on cholesterol. But what if that advice sent us down a really dangerous path? A path that, for many, ends in cognitive decline. That's the huge central question we're digging into.
The argument at the heart of all this is that a massive shift is coming. It suggests that in January 2026, the official U.S. dietary guidelines are going to reverse a 50-year-old mistake. The idea is they'll finally admit that the low-fat advice was flawed and that we should actually be eating more meat and animal fats.
So how in the world did we get here? Well, that brings us to our first section. Let's unpack the history and the consequences of what some are calling the 50-year food mistake. Okay, this timeline really lays out a startling connection. Back in the 1970s, the war on fat officially began. And as people started cutting fat out of their diets, they had to replace those calories with something, right? So they turned to carbohydrates. And the result? As carb consumption just skyrocketed, so did the rates of obesity, diabetes, and, most alarmingly, dementia, a disease that used to be incredibly rare. And get this connection is so strong that some in the medical community are actually starting to reframe dementia entirely. They're calling it type 3 diabetes. The idea is that the brain becomes so overwhelmed by sugar that it develops insulin resistance. And when that happens, it can't get the energy it needs and it effectively begins to starve itself.
So if carbohydrates are the problem, then what's the solution? This is where the counter-argument gets really fascinating. It turns out that fat, far from being the enemy, might be exactly what our brains are crying out for. Let's look at the science behind why your brain actually craves fat.
Take a look at this number, 70%. That's the percentage of your brain's dry weight. So if you take out all the water, that is made of fat. Your brain isn't just built with fat, it's practically made of fat. It's the #1 building block. And here's what that fat is made of. About half is made up of essential fatty acids like omega-3s. But just look at that second slice. A full 25% of your brain's fat is cholesterol. Yep, the very same substance we've been told to avoid for decades. It's actually an essential component for protecting your brain cells. Now, if fat is the building material, what about the fuel? Well, our brains can run on two different types of energy. The standard fuel is glucose, which we get from carbs. But the premium fuel, according to this argument, is something called ketones, which your body produces when it breaks down fat. Ketones are basically a cleaner, more efficient energy source that helps you avoid all the inflammation and insulin resistance that comes with a high-sugar diet. All right, let's zoom out for a second and look at this from a different angle, because this is where it all starts to click. To really understand why our bodies might prefer fat, we need to look back, and I mean way, way back, at our evolutionary history and what some call our 2.5 million-year-old diet. This chart just puts our dietary history into such a stark perspective. For 2.5 million years, humans evolved as hunter-gatherers. Our bodies adapted to a diet that was really rich in meat and fat. Then, just 10,000 years ago, which is a total blink of an eye in evolutionary terms, the agricultural revolution happened, and suddenly grains and carbs became our main food source. And here's the crucial point. The argument is that our genetic code, our DNA, is still optimized for that ancient ancestral diet. Our digestive systems, our cells, our entire operating system is designed to thrive on meat and animal fat. We simply haven't had enough time to adapt to processing the massive load of carbohydrates that we eat today. Okay, so given all this science and this historical case, what does it actually mean for us right now? How do we apply this? Well, that brings us to the really practical part of all this, sparking a revolution right on your dinner plate. You've heard that famous saying, right? You are what you eat. Well, the thinking here is that this is literally true. If you want to rebuild your brain and protect your body from all these metabolic diseases, the change has to start with the food you choose to eat every single day.
The revolution it's talking about is actually pretty simple. It's broken down into just 2 steps. First, eliminate the foods that are starving your brain of the right fuel and the right building blocks. And second, embrace the foods that truly feed and rebuild it.
So what are these brain-starving foods? According to this perspective, they're pretty much the staples of many of our diets today. We're talking about rice, bread, pasta, sugar, and most of those processed foods you find in the middle of the grocery store. All of them are primary sources of carbs that just overwhelm our system with glucose.
And what should you replace them with? The foods that actually feed the brain. These are nutrient-dense, high-fat options like meat, beef, pork, you name it, butter, whole eggs, fish rich in omega-3s like salmon, and healthy fats from things like avocados. These are presented as the true building blocks for a healthy brain.
And the promised result of making this kind of dietary shift, it isn't just about preventing disease way down the road. It's about achieving mental clarity right now. No more brain fog. It's about having stable, consistent energy all day long without those afternoon crashes. And maybe most importantly, it's about gaining freedom from that nagging fear of cognitive decline. So, after 50 years of this low-fat dogma, the argument is pretty simple. Our brains have been starving in a sea of sugar. The case is made that it's time to stop fighting our own biology and go back to the diet our DNA was actually built for. Which, of course, leaves one final crucial question. Are you ready to feed your brain?